The master sequence. How your human operating system becomes a timeline. Once the human operating system becomes visible, the next question is straightforward. How does an internal definition become an actual life experience? How does meaning become behavior? How does behavior become a pattern? And how does a pattern eventually become what appears to be a continuous timeline? Altus Human Systems organizes that process through the master sequence. The master sequence shows how consciousness moves from a point of view into meaning, belief, identity, state, perception, expectation, choice, and action, and how repeated direction becomes experienced continuity. The complete sequence is this. Consciousness experiences through a point of view. The point of view assigns meaning. Meaning forms belief and identity. Identity produces a state of being. State shapes perception and expectation. Perception influences choice. Choice becomes action. Action expresses compatibility with an experiential direction. Repeated direction becomes the experience timeline. Change begins when operating definitions are examined and replaced with definitions that are compatible with the preferred direction. That is the full sequence. It may sound like a series of separate steps, but it operates as one connected system. Each part influences the next, and the later parts often reinforce the earlier ones. A meaning creates a belief. The belief shapes identity. Identity produces a state. The state affects what can be perceived. Perception affects which choices appear available. Those choices become actions. The actions produce feedback. And the feedback may then be interpreted as proof that the original meaning was correct. This is how an internal conclusion can become a repeating external pattern. The sequence begins with consciousness experiencing through a point of view. A point of view is the position from which experience is being interpreted. No individual experiences physical reality from every possible perspective at once. You experience from a particular location, history, identity, state, set of beliefs, and focus of attention. This creates a specific point of view. Two people can witness the same event and experience it differently because they are not observing it through the same internal organization. Suppose two people are invited to speak publicly. One person experiences the invitation as recognition. The other experiences it as exposure. The invitation is the same. The point of view is different. The first person may believe that being seen creates opportunity. The second may believe that being seen creates danger. Neither person is responding only to the invitation. Each person is responding to what the invitation means from within their existing point of view. This brings us to the next part of the sequence. The point of view assigns meaning. Events do not arrive with one complete personal meaning permanently attached to them. An event occurs, and the individual interprets what it represents. A person receives criticism. One interpretation is, "This information may help me improve." Another is, "This proves I am incapable." Another is, "This person does not understand what I am doing." Another is, "I am being attacked." The observable event may contain the same words. The assigned meaning changes the experience. Meaning matters because the meaning given to an event determines which beliefs become active. If criticism means useful information, curiosity may become available. If criticism means humiliation, defensiveness may become available. If criticism means proof of failure, withdrawal may become available. The event begins the interaction. The assigned meaning begins the internal direction. Meaning then forms or reinforces belief and identity. A belief is not merely a thought that passes through the mind. A belief is a definition accepted as true. It functions as an operating rule. If a person accepts the definition that disagreement causes abandonment, that definition becomes more than an opinion. It begins organizing behavior. The person may monitor other people's reactions, avoid difficult conversations, minimize their own preferences, and interpret tension as evidence that the relationship is at risk. The belief also contributes to identity. The person may begin identifying as the one who must keep the peace. They may see themselves as difficult if they express a need, selfish if they set a limit, or unsafe if they become fully visible. Identity is the version of self that naturally follows from the accepted definitions. If the belief is, my needs drive people away, the identity may become, I am too much. If the belief is, I must manage everyone's response, the identity may become, I am responsible for keeping everyone stable. If the belief is, nothing I do makes a difference, the identity may become, I am powerless. These identities are not necessarily spoken aloud. A person may never consciously say, I have decided to become powerless. The identity is often revealed through what feels possible, natural, safe, or appropriate. Identity then produces a state of being. State of being is the internal position from which the person is engaging experience. It includes emotion, but it is larger than emotion. It includes orientation, expectation, tension, openness, focus, and readiness to respond. Someone operating from an identity of powerlessness may enter a situation already defeated. Someone operating from an identity of responsibility for everyone may enter a room already scanning for distress. Someone operating from an identity of being unwanted may enter a relationship already searching for signs of departure. The state follows logically from the identity. If I believe I am unsafe, vigilance makes sense. If I believe I am unworthy, self-protection makes sense. If I believe I am responsible for everyone, constant monitoring makes sense. The state is not random. It reflects the definitions currently active. State then shapes perception and expectation. Perception is not the same as objective fact. Perception is what becomes noticeable, meaningful, and relevant from within a particular state. When a person is anxious, possible threats become easier to detect. When a person expects rejection, small changes in tone may appear highly significant. When a person feels secure, the same changes may be interpreted as ordinary variation. This does not mean perception is entirely invented. It means that perception is selective. A person cannot consciously focus on every piece of information available at once. The operating system highlights what appears important. Active beliefs and states influence what receives attention. Imagine someone who believes that people eventually lose interest in them. A friend takes several hours to answer a message. The person notices the delay immediately. They remember other delayed responses. They begin reviewing the last conversation. They may give very little attention to the friend's long history of reliability, the possibility that the friend is working, or the simple fact that no explanation is yet available. The delay is real. The conclusion is not yet established. But the state makes one meaning more visible than the others. Perception and expectation work closely together. Expectation is what the person assumes is likely to happen next. Once the delay has been interpreted as rejection, abandonment may become the expected outcome. The person is no longer responding only to the unanswered message. They are responding to the anticipated future. This is important because human beings frequently take action in response to what they expect, not only to what has already occurred. A person who expects rejection may withdraw first. A person who expects criticism may remain silent. A person who expects failure may delay beginning. A person who expects conflict may communicate defensively before any conflict has actually started. Expectation begins organizing the future before the future has arrived. Perception then influences choice. Choice does not occur in a vacuum. A person chooses from the options they can recognize from within their present state and expectation. When the state is contracted, the range of visible choices may become very narrow. A person may believe there are only two options: remain silent or lose the relationship, accept the request or become selfish, stay in the current situation or face catastrophe, succeed perfectly or fail completely. Those may not be the only available choices. They may be the only choices visible from within the operating definition. This is why changing perception can change the range of choice. If a person no longer defines disagreement as abandonment, additional options become visible. They can ask a question. They can state a preference. They can request clarification. They can allow another person to disagree. They can maintain a boundary without declaring war. The external world may not have changed yet, but the available direction has expanded. Choice then becomes action. Action is where internal organization becomes physically expressed. Communication is action. Silence can be action. A boundary is action. Avoidance is action. Asking for clarification is action. Making a decision is action. Refusing to make a decision is also an action within the larger sequence because it continues a direction. The human operating system is revealed not only through what a person says they believe, but through what they repeatedly express. A person may say they believe they deserve respect, but if they consistently remain in situations they define as disrespectful, avoid naming the behavior, and continue making themselves available without change, their actions are expressing a different operating direction. This does not mean the stated belief is dishonest. It means the system is not yet internally consistent. One part prefers respect. Another part may believe that requiring respect will result in loneliness, conflict, punishment, or loss. The visible contradiction is useful information. It reveals that more than one definition is operating. Action expresses compatibility with an experiential direction. Compatibility is not a reward for thinking correctly. It is not a moral judgment. It is the degree to which the complete organization corresponds with a particular kind of experience. Suppose a person says they want clear, honest relationships. If they communicate indirectly, conceal their preferences, avoid boundaries, and expect others to read their mind, their actions are not fully compatible with the relationship they say they prefer. This does not mean they are being punished with poor communication. It means the preferred outcome and the expressed organization are pointing in different directions. Greater compatibility may begin with one honest statement. It may involve asking directly rather than assuming. It may involve allowing another person to respond freely instead of attempting to manage the response. The action does not guarantee that the relationship will continue. It expresses compatibility with clarity. Sometimes clarity improves a relationship. Sometimes clarity reveals that the relationship cannot continue in its current form. Either result provides more accurate information than maintaining an arrangement through concealment. Compatibility, therefore, does not mean controlling the external result. It means organizing your participation in alignment with the direction you prefer. A person cannot control every employer, partner, family member, institution, physical condition, or circumstance. But they can examine the meanings, expectations, choices, communication, boundaries, and actions they bring into the situation. That is where conscious participation becomes available. When a direction is repeated, it becomes the experience timeline. A timeline is not created by one isolated decision. It is the continuity formed through repeated compatibility. One choice may begin a different direction. Repeated choices establish it. Suppose someone has spent years avoiding visibility because they believe being seen leads to criticism. One day, they share a piece of work publicly. That action represents a new direction. But the new timeline is not established only because one post was published. The person may need to continue expressing, learning, adjusting, and remaining visible even when discomfort appears. Each compatible action strengthens the new continuity. The shift may initially be subtle. They tolerate being seen for slightly longer. They recover more quickly from criticism. They stop treating one person's response as a final verdict. They notice opportunities that were previously ignored. They begin identifying as someone who can participate publicly without requiring universal approval. The external timeline changes as the internal organization becomes more consistent. This process does not always look dramatic. Many meaningful shifts occur through ordinary decisions. A direct conversation, a completed application, a boundary maintained calmly, a different interpretation of an old trigger, a willingness to pause before reacting, a refusal to turn incomplete information into a final conclusion. A new timeline may begin quietly. The absence of fireworks does not mean nothing changed. The master sequence can be seen clearly through one complete example. Imagine a person who believes people leave when they express needs. Their point of view is organized around the possibility of abandonment. When a friend becomes temporarily unavailable, the person assigns the meaning. I am becoming a burden. That meaning reinforces the belief, my needs drive people away. The belief contributes to the identity. I must be easy, undemanding, and self-contained to remain connected. That identity produces a state of anxiety and self-monitoring. From that state, the person perceives the friend's reduced availability as evidence of rejection. They expect the relationship to end. From that expectation, several choices appear available. They may suppress the need. They may apologize unnecessarily. They may over-explain. They may become distant before the friend can leave. The action creates tension or incomplete communication. The friend may become confused or may genuinely pull away. The person then interprets the result as proof. I knew people would leave. The sequence has completed a circle. The outcome appears to confirm the belief, even though the belief influenced the choices that helped shape the interaction. Now imagine the person begins with a different operating definition. Having a need does not make me a burden, and another person's availability can be discussed without deciding my worth. The external event is still the same. The friend is temporarily unavailable, but the assigned meaning becomes less absolute. The person may think, I do not yet know what the change means. That meaning supports a different identity. I can ask directly and remain stable while receiving information. The state becomes more grounded. Perception expands. The person notices the reduced availability, but also recognizes that several explanations are possible. Expectation becomes less rigid. Instead of expecting abandonment, they expect that a conversation can provide information. A different choice becomes available. They ask whether something has changed and explain what they noticed. That action expresses compatibility with clarity, self-respect, and honest connection. The friend may respond with reassurance. The friend may reveal a problem. The friend may say they need more space. The external answer is not controlled, but the person has entered a different experiential direction. They are no longer using silence, assumption, or self-erasure to preserve connection. The new direction is not defined by receiving the preferred answer. It is defined by participating from a more compatible organization. This is an important distinction. Changing the operating system does not mean arranging reality so that nothing uncomfortable ever happens. It means becoming capable of engaging what happens from a different point of view. A person can experience disappointment without turning it into proof of worthlessness. They can experience disagreement without automatically predicting abandonment. They can encounter uncertainty without immediately constructing the worst possible future. They can receive a no without defining themselves as permanently rejected. The event may still be difficult. The timeline changes through the meaning, identity, state, expectation, and action that follow. The master sequence is not meant to become another reason to monitor every thought anxiously. You do not need to inspect your consciousness every 30 seconds to ensure that no unauthorized definition has entered the building. The purpose is orientation. When a repeating pattern appears, the sequence helps you recognize that the visible outcome did not emerge from nowhere. There was a point of view. There was an assigned meaning. There was an active belief. There was an identity and state. There was an expectation. There were choices and actions. The sequence helps make the organization understandable. For a simple application, choose one recent event. Keep the exercise small. Ask yourself, what did I decide the event meant? Because of that meaning, what did I expect? What action followed from that expectation? Did that action express the direction I actually prefer? These questions do not reveal the entire operating system. They begin making the direction visible. Suppose you delayed submitting an application. You may discover that the delay meant more than incomplete paperwork. Perhaps submitting it meant being evaluated. Evaluation meant possible rejection. Rejection meant proof that you were not qualified. From that meaning, delay appeared protective. The behavior was not simply laziness. It was an action compatible with avoiding a feared identity conclusion. Once that becomes visible, a different choice may become available. You may redefine the application as an opportunity to receive information rather than a final verdict on your worth. Then submitting it expresses a different direction. Again, the action does not control the result. It changes your participation. The master sequence shows how experience becomes organized. Consciousness experiences through a point of view. The point of view assigns meaning. Meaning forms belief and identity. Identity produces a state of being. State shapes perception and expectation. Perception influences choice. Choice becomes action. Action expresses compatibility with an experiential direction. Repeated direction becomes the experience timeline. And change begins when operating definitions are examined and replaced with definitions that are compatible with the preferred direction. Understanding this sequence creates clarity. But clarity and change are not identical. A person can recognize every part of the pattern, explain it perfectly, and still continue producing the same response. They may understand the old definition while remaining organized around it. They may know what they prefer while still believing that the new direction is unsafe. Seeing the operating system is the beginning. Reorganizing it is another process. That is the next essential distinction. Why understanding a pattern does not automatically change it. Stay stable. Pay attention. Reality is speaking.